Hello and welcome to Ukramedia.com. My name is Sergey Prakhnevsky, and today I'm going to show you 16 useful expressions in After Effects. So without any further ado, let's dive right in. Number one is value, and it's extremely easy, but very useful. So let me show you what I'm talking about here. I'm going to select the first layer here, and I'm going to hit R on my keyboard to reveal the rotation property. And next, I'll hold down Alt and click on the stopwatch to activate my expression. And I'm just going to type in 50 in here. What happens? As you can see, it set my rotation to 50, and it's pretty locked in. So I can't really control this number. It's locked into 50. And that can be a bit of a problem. So what happens if I want to have control over that? So all you do, just type in value. And what it does, it gives you the current value that you type in here. So you can type in 20, and that's what it'll give you, 20. And, you know, how can that be useful? You can definitely build up on that. So I can say value times 2. And as you can see, my 20 went to 40. If I type in 60, you know, it'll give me 120. But the problem is, what if, you know, this is just one dimension. But what if you're dealing with something like position? I'm going to hit P on my keyboard, and you see 2 dimensions, or even yet, you know, if you make it 3D, you have 3 dimensions. How do you deal with that? And so that's where you would have to define which value you're talking about here. So the way it works in After Effects, you just have to label which value. So the first value would be value 0. You would think it would be 1, but it's actually 0. And then this one would be value 1, and then value 2. So let me show you what I'm talking about here. I'm going to alt click on the stopwatch here. I'm just going to define each value. So I'm going to open square bracket here and just type value, and then open square bracket 0 and close square bracket. So I just defined the first one, and then I'm going to say comma value and open square bracket 1 and value open square bracket 2 close square bracket, and I'm going to do another close square bracket to close the whole thing. And as you can see that I just defined all 3 of them. So now I can work with this. You know, I can say this second value in here, whatever I type in here, times 2. So if I type in 100, it's going to give me, you know, 200. So you can see how value can be useful in After Effects. Number 2 is layer index. And so for this, I have 2 of my logos in here, and I'm going to hit P on my keyboard to reveal position property of each logo. And I'm going to play with this one first. So I'm going to alt click on the position stopwatch, and now you can see my expression is active, and I'm going to just separate these 2 X and Y, just separate them, and I'm going to type the same thing we've done in the previous example. So something like this, and then close square bracket. So as you can see, I just separate them in my expression. So now I can say, all right, this first value, I'm going to tell you to be X. And if I let go, there's an error. It doesn't know what X is because I made it up. And so now I have to define for After Effects what X means. So I'm going to say X, X equals, and then I'm going to say pick whip over here to the X axis of the layer below, position X axis. And next, I'm going to do semicolon to close that. So it's like a period in the expression world. And as you can see, it snaps right at the same X axis that it is on this layer. And so what happens if I add something to this? I'm going to say, let's do plus 300. And as you can see, it offsets it. So that's kind of cool. But what if, let's say, I don't want it to refer to a specific layer? What if I wanted to refer to a layer below? Like right now it says, you know, logo 1. So it strictly refers to this layer. But what if I wanted to refer to whatever's underneath it or above it? And so that's where index comes in, layer index comes in handy. So if I type in index, and then index is basically this number, so 1, 2, 3. So if I want to refer to the layer below me, as you can see, the number is 2, so it's a bigger. So I'm on 1, so I want to go to index that's a bit bigger, 2, right? So it's going to be plus 1. And then you can see nothing happens because it refers to the exact same layer, so that's good. But where it can get really awesome is when you select this layer and then do Control D and duplicate it. And now this layer refers to this one, and so on. You can see how it kind of offsets itself. So yeah, it can be very useful. Number 3 is time. And so for this, I have just a text and a logo in my composition. And so the reason why I have text is basically for like debugging purposes. So I can visually show you what I'm talking about. So let's say I'm going to alt click on this source text and to activate the expression. And I can just type in 50, for example. And you can visually see 50. So what happens if you do like time times, 40? Now you can visually see that the number is moving. And so essentially what time is, it's almost like an engine. So it gives you like motion or movement, right? And so let me show you how you can use that in a practical sense. I'm going to select my layer here and hit R to reveal the rotation property. And I'm going to alt click to activate the expression. And inside here, I can just say time let's say times, I don't know, 25. And now visually, you can see that it's actually animating my, my property here. So you can definitely see how time can be used in expression. Number 4 is valueAtTime. And so for this, I have 4 logos, but the first logo is actually keyframed. And as you can see, it scales in, and I just have 2 keyframes. But what happened if I want to apply this animation to all my other layers? And I'm just going to select the other non-animated layers and hit S to reveal the scale property. And so what if I want to apply this animation to that without using keyframes? And so I'm just going to alt click on the scale property of this layer here, and I'm going to pick whip to and refer the animation that's above me. So basically now it's grabbing this animation and applies it here without using keyframes. But what if, let's say, I want to do the whole index thing? I want to refer to the layer above and not a specific one. Right now it refers to layer 1. But what if I want to do the whole index? So let's do that. So I'm going to say index, and this time we're going up. So I want to refer to the layer above. So I'm going to say -1, because remember we're on 2, and a -1 will bring us to 1. And nothing happens, obviously. It's the same thing. But what if I want to offset it now? And that's where valueAtTime comes in handy. So I'm just going to add to this expression. I'm going to say period valueAtTime, and then open bracket, and I'm going to say time minus, and I'll say 0.15, and then close bracket. And so what happens now, if you play it, it slightly offsets it. And obviously you can control this number. You can, get the exact offset that you want, but this is pretty cool. So all I have to do now is just right click on the scale and do copy expression and select the other 2 scales, and then do Control V to paste that. And if I preview it, as you can see, all of those layers are nicely offset. Number 5 is sourceRectAtTime. And so for this, I'm going to double click on this icon in here to bring a shape layer into my composition. And I'm going to go a bit deep into it until I get the size here. And I'm going to select it and hit S on my keyboard twice to solo that. And I'll uncheck this proportion icon. And next, I'll set my Y-axis to 20 pixels. And then the X-axis, I want it to be the exact same as basically the width of it, I want it to be exact same as my text. So how do I do that? Let me show you how to set that up. And so now, before I do that, actually, I'll click on the stopwatch here to activate my expression, and I'm going to separate these two. Basically the same thing we've done in previous examples. So I'm just going to type value 0 and then value 1. And so now for the first value, I'm actually going to tell it to be X-axis again, and make sure you have comma after that. Okay, and then I'm going to define what that X is. I'm going to say X, you are going to be the layer below. Okay, and I'll build up on that actually because I have to be more specific here. So I'm going to say sourceRectAtTime, and then open bracket, close bracket, and then period. And now I can either say width or height. So I'm going to say, obviously I want the width, and then semicolon to close that. And so now if I let go, you can see that the width of the shape layer is exactly same as my text layer in here. So this is kind of cool because now whatever I type in here, you can see that it's adjusting to the width of my text. So here's a practical example how to use sourceRectAtTime in a real world project. So here's the lower third I created using expressions. In other words, it only activates all the animations using these 2 keyframes, and then it animates out using the other 2 keyframes. So these 4 keyframes activate everything else that you see. But the way I rigged up text in here, if you type any other name, would it be like Elijah Patrick? You can see that the width of it all adjusts without any kind of problems. In other words, it doesn't even affect the animation. So I can hit preview, and you can see that animation is playing very smoothly without any problems. So you can see how you can use sourceRectAtTime to set something dynamic like this. And in fact, this lower third I will be showing how to create in one of my future tutorials. So definitely be sure to check back. Number 6 is loopIN and loopOUT. And so for this, I just have a quick, simple animation, nothing crazy. But what if I want to take this animation and make it loop out all the way to the end of my composition here? How do I do that using an expression? And so the quickest way to do it is I'll click on this stopwatch here. And if you go to expression language menu and under property, you can select either loopIN or loopOUT. I'm going to select the loopOUT. And what it means, loopIN, loopOUT, it just means that if it says loop out, it's going to loop after my very last keyframes here. So as you can see, it's set to cycle, and it's just looping my animation here. But nothing is happening before my first keyframe. So, but if I were to change loopOUT to loopIN, it's going to loop before my first keyframe, and then when it plays out the keyframes, and it stops at the very last keyframe. So that's what it means, loopIN and loopOUT. And so I'm going to change it back to loopOUT, but let's see what other options we have here. So instead of cycle, let's change that to ping pong. Okay, and so now if I scroll that, you can see that it's going back and forth. It reverses it, so that it, that's what it means by ping pong. But what if let's say we wanted to play out these keyframes, and then what if I want to ping pong only between these two keyframes? I want to go back one keyframe, and so that's what it means here, num keyframes. If you type 1, which means that it's going to play out this animation, and then it's going to go back one keyframe, and it's just going to do this on and on and on. So let me show you what I mean. Let me preview that. So you can see it's playing my animation, but then it just goes back and forth. And, and if you set it to 2, you'll see that it's going to go 2 keyframes back. There you go. So that's what it means by num keyframes. So I'm going to set it back to the default number, which is 0. And let's see what else we have here. There's also one more option called offset. And so what that does, I'll just play that out to show you what I mean. So it plays out the animation and just offsets it. Number 7 is linear and ease. And so for this, I have a quick little example in here. And so what if, let's say when I drag this circle up and down, what if I wanted for it to affect the rotation of this logo? How would I make that happen using expressions? And so let me show you what I mean here. I'm going to select this circle and hit P to show the position, and then select the logo itself and hit R to show the rotation. And I'm going to apply the expression to this rotation. So I'm going to alt click on the stopwatch to activate the expression. And I'm going to go into expression language menu here and go up to interpolation. And I'll select this linear expression here. And right away, I have to do some work here. So I'm going to deal with this one first. So I'm going to go to the beginning of this expression and hit enter. And I'm going to define what that T is. So we're going to grab the pick whip here, the y-axis of this position of this circle. And so that's what we're going to say T, you are that. And then I'm going to do semicolon here to close it. And so now we have to do some work here. So what's the minimum number of this that I want? So when it's up here, which is around 180, I want, I'm going to type, that's going to be my minimum number. So I'm going to do 180. And then the maximum is when I'm down here, which is around 900 or so. So I'm going to type 900. So when it is 180, I want the rotation, because we're in a rotation, I want that to be 90 degrees. So again, so when I'm up here, all the way up here, I want for the rotation to be 90. And then when I'm all the way down to 900, I want the rotation to be negative 90. So like so. So now, when I drag this up and down, you can see that my logo is going with it. And again, I'm using linear, but you can also use ease, and it's just a difference in interpolation. Number 8 is clamp. And so for this, I'm back at the same example here. But, when I click and drag my circle in here, you can see that it's moving around all over the place. What if I wanted to restrict it on both x-axis and y-axis? How do I do that? And so that's where clamp comes in useful. So I'm going to hit P to reveal the position. I'm going to right-click in here and do separate dimensions. And so now I just have x and y. So for the x, I just want to keep it at 184. In other words, I don't want to go side to side at all. So I just want it to stay put at 184. So I'm just going to alt click in here and just type 184. And when you do that, it just restricts you to 184. So now if I click and drag it to side, you can see that it's not going anywhere. So that was easy. But for the y-axis, I wanted to restrict from, remember, 180 is my minimum and 900. So I don't want it to go below 180 or past 900. So how do I restrict it? So that's where the clamp comes in very handy. So I'm going to alt click on the Y position here, and I'm going to start typing clamp and then open bracket. And first I have to define what it is I'm going to be restricting. So I'm going to pick whip to this Y position. So that's the first thing you'll see here. And then next I'm going to do comma, and then I'll do my minimum number, which is 180. and then comma again, and then 900 for the maximum, and close bracket. And so now if I click and drag this circle, if I go all the way down here, you can see that it stops at 900. But if I push it all the way up, it stops at 180. Number 9 is toWorld and toComp. And so this one is quite easy, but at the same time, it can be a bit confusing. So let me show you what I'm talking about here. So I have a logo in here, and I'm going to hit P on my keyboard to see the position of my layer. So, and the way it works in After Effects, the origin is actually up here of your composition. So if I hit 0, you can see that that's where the origin is at. But let me undo this. So now this is the correct world position of my layer. But it gets a bit tricky when you start parenting it to other objects. So I'm going to do Control-Alt-Shift-Y to bring in null, and I'm just going to randomly place it over here in my composition. So watch what happens to my position when I parent my layer to this null. You can see that it gives me a different position, but it hasn't moved. So why is it? And the reason why, because now instead of this object seeing the world origin, which is upper left corner here, now its origin is this null, this parent. And so I'll show you what I mean. So if I zero everything out, you can see that it goes to the origin of this null. So that can be, a bit problematic when you're trying to link things up, because this is not a correct world position. So let me show you what I mean. I'm going to duplicate this layer and make sure that it's not parented to anything. And I'm going to hit P to see my position. So this is the correct world position. It's right over the top of it. So I'm going to drag it over here. So what happens if I alt-click on stopwatch here and just link the position to the position of this layer? See what happens. Look, even though it's the exact same, it's in different positions, because this one is the correct position and this one is based on the parent. So how would I get the correct position, or how would I bypass this parent and get the correct position? And so that's where the toWorld or toComp comes in handy. So I'm going to select this layer in here, and then in this expression, I'm just going to pick whip to this layer that we want to get the correct position from. And I'm going to type period toWorld and then open bracket and anchor point close bracket. And so now you can see that disappeared because it's right over the top of it. And here's the correct position, even though they're different, but they're in the same position. So you can see how toWorld can come in handy. And by the way, the difference between toWorld and toComp, toComp has to do more with 2 dimensions, but when you make things 3D, you definitely want to use toWorld. And in fact, toWorld also works with 2 dimensions as well. Number 10 is wiggle, and this one is quite popular. A lot of people use it. So for this example, I'm going to apply the wiggle expression to my rotation property, but you can apply it to any of them, really. So I'm going to select the layer here and then hit R to reveal the rotation, and alt-click on the stopwatch here to activate the expression, and I'm just going to type wiggle and open bracket. So the first number is your frequency, so I'm just going to do 5, and second one is amplitude, so I'm just going to do like 90 or so, and close bracket. And now if I hit preview, you can see that it's going to give me random movement. Number 11 is if else. And this one is pretty powerful and you can use it in so many ways, but I'm only going to show you like one little thing here. So for this example, I just have the logo again. And this time I'm going to apply a checkbox control right on top of my logo. And so there it is. And I'll label this wiggle. And so what I want to do is when I check this wiggle checkbox, I want for the rotation property of this layer to be wiggling. In other words, I want for it to apply the wiggle expression. And so let me show you how to set that up. So I'm going to select this and hit R to reveal my rotation property, and alt-click on the stopwatch to activate the expression. And so now I'm going to do if-else expression. So I'm going to say if, open bracket, and I have to define if what? If this checkbox is checked. So how do I tell it to be checked? So if you do 2 equal signs and then 1, that means it's checked. So if checkbox is checked and close bracket, so what do I want to do? So if it's checked, I want it to do the wiggle, just random wiggle expression. So whatever number you want to type in here, that's cool. But if it's not, then you say else what? Else I want it to be 0 and a semicolon. So basically, if the checkbox is checked, I want it to have the wiggle expression, and if it's not, I just don't want it to do anything. So right now, it's not checked. If I hit preview, nothing happens. But if I check the checkbox, you can see that the wiggle expression is applied. Number 12 is length. And so for this, I'm going to use this text to show you visually what I'm doing, and also a null and an object. So we're going to find the distance between these two. And so let me show you visually here in this through this text. I'm going to alt-click on this source text, and I'm just going to type length, and then open square bracket, and I'm just going to say A and B. So point A and point B. And so nothing obviously would happen because that's useless information. So I'm going to define what A and B is. So A equals, and I'm going to say it's going to be the x-axis of this null and semicolon, and then I'm going to do B. So I'm going to define what B is. In other words, second point is going to be the x-axis of this logo, and then semicolon. So essentially what I did here, I defined the 2 points, and it will find length between those 2 points. So right now, if I let go, I see visually the number. So if I grab the null, if I move it on the x-axis, you can see that the closer I get to the center of the logo, which is the origin, it will, it can get to 0. But then if I pull to the left, I can see the size of this, I guess the radius of this logo. And so it's around 325. So that's kind of cool. So I'm going to select this useful expression and Control-C and copy that. And I'm just going to get rid of that. And next, what I'll do is go to the scale property of this logo and alt-click on that and then paste that expression into here. And so next what I'll do, I'll define this length differently. I'm just going to say L, you're going to equal the length expression. And so semicolon here to keep going. And so now I'm going to apply this length expression to our linear expression that we learned earlier, just to show you how powerful this can be. So I'm going to say linear, and then open square bracket, and I'm going to say grab the values from the L, this L expression. So the minimum number will be 0, and the maximum number will be, what is it we said? What was the radius? I think it was 325. And I want that to affect my scale. So I want them from 0 to 250. So close square bracket and semicolon. But I also want to define this expression as well. I want to give it a variable. So I'm going to say temp for right now. And then the reason why I do that, because I want to apply this to both, to both dimensions here. So I'm just going to say open square bracket and temp, apply that expression to this one, and then temp to that one. And so now if I let go, if I grab my null here, and if I move it on x-axis, you can see that it gives us a cool little effect. Here's a practical example how length can be used in a real-world project. And so for this, I just have this null, but when you move it up and down, it triggers all kinds of stuff. As you can see, the color changes, the size of the text changes, and also if you notice in the back, there's like a blur and transition and all that stuff. And all that stuff is triggered by length and linear. And so you can see how powerful it can be, this dynamic effect. And by the way, this I will show you how to create in one of my future tutorials, so definitely stay tuned for that. Number 13 is Math Absolute. And so for this, I have just text and the shape, but I'm going to select this text and hit R to reveal the rotation property. And I'm going to alt-click on the stopwatch to activate the expression. And I'm just going to type Math.abs and open bracket and close bracket. And so what it does, obviously right now I have an error, but what it does, if I type in any negative number, would it be, negative 90? It will always give you a positive number. And so how would that be useful? So for example, I'm going to type in wiggle expression. Let's do like 5, I don't know, let's do 180. And so now if you play it, you can see that it gives me both negative numbers and positive numbers. So, but what if I wanted to restrict this expression only to positive numbers? How would I do it? First, let me define this. I'm going to say W, you're going to be this wiggle expression, semicolon, and here I'll do Math.abs and open bracket, and I'll say you're going to be W, which means that wiggle expression, and then close bracket. And so now, if you notice it, it's only in positive direction. So that can be very useful. And another thing you can do, you can also say here, if let's say you want the opposite of that, you want everything to be negative, you can say times -1. And so now everything is negative. Number 14 is Math.round. And so this one does exactly what it sounds like. So I'm going to alt-click on this source text to show you visually what I'm talking about. So if I do an expression like time times 20, you can see visually that I have a bunch of numbers and it's pretty messy. So how do I get rid of all these decimals and just hold on to the big number. And that's where Math.round comes in handy. So I'm just going to define this expression. I'm going to say T, you are this expression. And so now I'm going to define it here. So let's see. I'm going to do Math.round and then open bracket, and I'm going to say T, close bracket. So basically I'm saying round this T value, which means this expression. In other words, instead of pasting that in here, I just kind of shorten it. And so now if I let go of it, you can see that it's going to give me 29. 15 is random, and what it does, it just gives you a random number. And so let me show you what I'm talking about here. I'm going to select the logo here and hit P to reveal the position of this logo. And I'm going to right click here and do separate dimensions. So now I just have X and Y separate. So I'm going to worry about the X position. I'm going to alt click on the stopwatch here, and I'm going to type an expression. Just type random, open bracket, and let's just do a random number. I'm going to do 600. And so what it'll do, it'll give me a random number that will not go higher than 600. So let's see, if I scroll, you can see that I have random numbers, but they do not go higher than 600. So that's kind of cool, but you can also do two numbers. You can say, give me a random number between 100 and 300. And so now you can see that it gives me a number between these two numbers. All right, so the last one is math minimum and math maximum. So for this, I already rigged up a quick example in here. I just have two columns in here, the column B, and I can easily move it up and down, just different length here. And so I also have the shape layer in here. It's just a shape layer, and I already split the position to X and Y. So I'm only going to worry about the X property in here. So if I were to alt click on this stopwatch here and link it up to any of these two, you can see that it will automatically snap. You know, I did it to B, so it snaps to a B and it goes with it. But what if I wanted for this shape layer to go with the highest column? So let's say if this one went higher, I wanted for this one to go with the highest one. How would I set this up? So let me show you how easy it is to do it. So I'm just going to say Math.max and then open bracket, and then I'll say A and B and close bracket. And then I'm going to define above that what A is and what B is. So A is going to be column A. And then B is going to be column B. And it's really as easy as that. And so now it's going to take the maximum number between these two. So now if I go, let's say if I drag this down, it's going to stay with the highest one. So if I drag that down, it's going to stay with this highest. And so you can definitely see how useful this would be with like creating graphs and stuff. And the same thing applies for minimum. So right now it's going with the highest number, but if you were to change this max to minimum or MIN, and then you can see that it snaps to the lowest number. So if this gets lower, then it does the same thing, but the opposite. All right, thank you so much for watching this tutorial. I hope you found it useful. If you would like the project file of this tutorial, you can download it at ucremedia.com. And make sure you like this video, share it, subscribe to my YouTube channel, like me on Facebook, follow me on Twitter, and all that good stuff. But until next time, my name is Sergey Praknevsky, and this is ucremedia.com.